Hey guys, I'm Dr. Kim Sage. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. Today's video is about signs of depression, and right now, because of what we're experiencing, how they can all kind of blur into one vague category of COVID and depression and sadness and health issues and financial concerns and all of our efforts to change the world, hopefully through racism issues. All of these things can really create a weight of heaviness and worry upon us that many of us we know are struggling with mental health issues. We were before COVID and now we really are. So let me just go through some signs for you to pay attention to, and then I'll kind of go into what a true depressive disorder looks like, but you can see how they overlap and how it can be super confusing. But before I get started, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell, and that way you will be joining me as I build this community. I'm so excited. I finally reached 108 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. I truly don't take you for granted, and I'm so excited. I hope you will keep joining me and keep sharing your comments, and we'll hopefully grow together. So I've been reading a lot of articles talking about what we're struggling with. And here's the problem is real depression and depressive symptoms often are very similar and can be very nuanced and overlap. So let me just go through the checklist of what we are experiencing generally right now. This is sort of across the board, right? It varies a bit. And then I'm going to describe depression, and hopefully you'll get what I'm saying, right? Okay, so we have increased appetite or weight loss, although I would say appetite increase and eating more is the bigger one. Many of us have fatigue and are dealing with insomnia, not sleeping well, stressing and worrying, having a lot of sleep issues, a lot of exhaustion. We are having a time where we're being a little more negative. There's a lot of pessimism, not a lot of optimism, a lot of negative news, a lot of negative conversations, a lot of negative social media. So right now our wiring is kind of, for many of us, it's kind of falling in that negative direction. There has been an increase in obviously many jokes about substance use and which alcohol places deliver, but there's been an increased use of substances and antidepressant medications. So definitely an increased substance abuse issue. There's also been a lot of anger and irritability and crankiness. And I think that anger can go with outrage over what's happening in the world. Certainly when we're not sleeping well and not eating well and we're not exercising like we could, all of that really affects our ability to manage our temper and our emotions. And so that can make us more irritable. Many of us are not taking good care of ourselves. And so we're not showering as often. We're not just doing basic self-care like we would, because many of us are still at home in the house. And it really is hard to differentiate the work environment from the home environment and to really see yourself compartmentalizing those things and taking care of yourself. It can all just kind of blend into one. Obviously, many couples are having issues at home together. It's been a lot of time alone together. Every couple I've been working with, in terms of just the one person with their partner, every single one has a different, I would say almost everyone, a different opinion on how to navigate quarantine alone. Very different belief systems about masks and risk and mitigating risks and concerns, and that's causing a lot of conflict. And so not only are we seeing some, separation issues happening and potentially some divorce issues as a result of COVID, but people are not having as much sex, and sex tends to be a glue that binds people. And so you might have a low sex drive and you might not be interested in sex. And so that can be part of it as well. Another really big one is that we often have increased physical pain. A lot of us are complaining about physical symptoms from backache to neck ache, and many of these can be stress related. They can be related to underlying conditions like, autoimmune diseases and things like that. But an increase in physical pain is something that we are hearing more and more about. And it often is a way we can hide depressive symptoms, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But I would say increased physical discomfort is also being reported. The last one is we often withdraw from people. We're just so overwhelmed. I keep saying this too, is that all of us came into this year, into COVID, with a pre-existing set of issues. We had our parenting issues, our job issues, our health issues, our ex issues with our exes. We have just all kinds of issues, depression, anxiety, OCD. So we all came into this COVID thing with our own loaded stack of a deck of cards that were probably already struggling, and we just added layers and layers and layers with all that's going on in the world. And so it's no surprise that we're feeling more depressed and more anxious. Any issues we already had are being exacerbated, right? So everything I just described, all of those are what people are saying they're experiencing right now. Now, not everybody is clinically depressed, but every single thing I just gave you in that list are also parts of major depression. And that is a problem, because if you're not getting help and reaching out to a therapist, a friend, your primary care physician, it can escalate into becoming more concerning. And I've just noticed in the last few weeks that many people are actually starting to reach out and initiate therapy again. If you were already in therapy, most of you guys, I think, did a great job of staying in therapy and knowing that this is not the time to not get help. But for a while there, people were not really reaching out. Even my colleagues were saying the same thing. And now people are beginning therapy again, or starting to realize that this is where we're at. It's not changing, right? And so if you have these issues around depression or anxiety or any mental health issue, it really is important to do whatever you can to get the resources to help yourself. We are finding new ways to get creative online, and it really is, it's making a difference, you guys. It really is. Okay, now let me just go through what major depression looks like so you can compare that list I just gave you, all right? So the hallmark of major depression is we have to have had 5 of 9 symptoms I'm going to go through for at least 2 weeks straight. So we have to have had 5 of 9 symptoms that represent a change in functioning that have been consistent for at least 2 weeks straight. And at least one of the symptoms needs to be a depressed mood or a loss of interest and pleasure in things you previously enjoyed. Clearly, none of these would be appropriate if they are part of an underlying medical condition, so that can be a different issue. But we're going to look at what are these symptoms and what do they look like. They're going to go back now and sound a lot like the ones I just described that many of us are struggling with as a result of COVID. The first one is depressed mood. So I'm going to use as usual, my handy DSM-5. This is our diagnostic manual. And I'm just going to quickly go through them. So the first one is depressed mood nearly every day. And for kids, it can look more like anger and irritability. And I would also say, if you watch the video I made around men's depression, I would say anger and irritability are often more common for men's depression than it is for women's. Obviously, as I said, you have a diminished interest and pleasure in activities that you once previously enjoyed. You're not really motivated, and you don't find them to be as enjoyable. Significant weight loss or weight gain, insomnia or hypersomnia, psychomotor agitation, fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day, feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt, diminished ability to concentrate or think, to make decisions, recurrent thoughts of death or dying, a suicide plan, suicidal ideation, any of those. So, all of these are going to be things we're experiencing nearly every day for at least 2 weeks. And with the exception of weight gain or weight loss and suicidality, those may not be present, of course, every single day, but they are the hallmark of part of this disorder in terms of how we diagnose. Now, the question is, how do we differentiate? Because as I just listed in the beginning of this video, we're experiencing a lot of the same things that fit the criteria. Maybe you are depressed, maybe you're just down. It can vary. But we're looking at how do we deal with these things. It makes a difference to get an understanding of how severe we are struggling, how severe the symptoms are. We can have anxiety in the midst of all of that. That's actually very common with depression. And so, for example, like an adjustment disorder, for that disorder, we don't meet the full criteria. So the full criteria are really meeting at least 5 of those 9 with depressed mood or diminished interest or pleasure in activities. And as we start to differentiate, I think you have to look at the bulk of the symptoms. How much are they affecting us? One of the hallmarks of, I say this word all the time, but the reality of everything in this book is it must be clinically significant. And really, what does that mean? That really means that it causes impairment. It gets us off our normal functioning, off our normal game. It affects how well we can live our life, how we can take care of ourselves, how we interact with others. All of the above in terms of social, emotional, functioning and physical functioning are all affected to a significant degree for most of these disorders, right? And so you want to begin to ask yourself, well, am I feeling these things every day? If some days are better than others, some days you're not so tired, some days you're more positive, there's a chance that you're dipping your toe into the waters of depression, but maybe you're not there yet. But if you're finding that more often than not, all of those things I described at the beginning of the video and as I went through the actual list are happening to you, it really is a time to reach out to someone and at least get an assessment to have them help you understand how much you may be struggling and if you might benefit from treatment. All right, guys, hope you found this helpful. Hope you will just be loving to yourselves and know that having these, symptoms of fatigue, insomnia, weight, appetite changes, all of those things, they can happen intermittently here and there. And I would say that right now, as we look back at some point and reflect on this time, I think we're going to find a massive collective trauma for all of us, a massive sort of depression at times. It's just about how we each deal with it. We're all wired so differently. Some of us can kind of dip our toes, as I said, into the waters of depression, but we can pull ourselves out. And for some, it's a dangerous walk into the deep end that really, truly needs help and will not get better without it. So whatever you do, I hope you will find ways to increase your self-care. This is, I know, super annoying, but the basic self-needs of self-care, if you're not super depressed, you can probably access these. Things like trying to get a little more exercise, trying to watch what you eat, trying to stick to some kind of schedule with sleep, which I think is really difficult right now. Focusing on your well-being, trying to do things like mindfulness in terms of engaging in meditation or guided imagery. All of those little things that you can access, if you're able to access them, should help a little bit. If you're trying all those things and they're not helping, that's also a sign and symptom that you need to get more help. So I'll link some resources below, but please don't be afraid to reach out and get help, and know that whatever you're struggling with, there is more often than not someone and some program and some option to help you get better. But maybe you can't do it alone, and that's okay. We're not really meant to be here alone and on our own. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening. Have a great day. Please stay safe and take good care. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. And if you like this content, hit the like button, and that will tell YouTube what to do with my content. And I hope you'll join me for more videos. All right, guys, take care. Stay safe. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.